studio. We used a bunch of different things. I think there was a lot of Marshall JCM 800s. Quite a few that had been modded.
Yeah.
And things.
Just like for extra gain or extra low end, things like that.
I was using some orange stuff, but I think mostly it was a lot of Marshalls, and there was our secret weapon. I think was the Vox Brian May.
It's
that
incredible.
little white one combo.
Yeah, I think it's like maybe 15 watts. It's a small, it's a special edition. There's like a limited number of them, and it's amazing. Like what you can get. What's really cool about it is you can use it kind of as a distortion box, is like to boost an amp, and then you can also use it just running on its own, of course. And it's one of the best sounding recording amps I think out there.
It's got like one knob, right?
No, this almost one knob.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like that one that he had put. There was one amp that he had put out. It was just like one knob, one tone, and it wasn't as good. This little white one is the shit. It's so good. Yeah.
And as far as guitars went, I used a different version of this. This is just this thing I've been working on with Epiphone. It's got Tonomatic switchers, kill switch.
Yeah,
a little bit there, which is pretty fun to mess around with. And there was a Jerry Jones Dan Electro copy.
Used a lot, yeah.
There was, I'm trying to think, there was a Les Paul Jr. I think that was pretty old. Oh, there was a 60s Epiphone Casino that got used a lot. And then a couple of Les Pauls. You had a Jimmy Page that you used a lot.
Yeah, it's cool. Like
sounded great. It wouldn't stay in tune though.
Never stayed. I mean, it's cool. Like you kind of use like the Marshalls and the Les Pauls to lay a foundation for some of the songs, like Bulletproof Heart. There's a lot of guitar layers on that one, and I guess the main sound that you're hearing is a combo of Les Paul through the 800 and a Plexi, and those are kind of mixed in together. And then we're using, for like the verses, there's like that clean, really nice chimey, almost like Cars-like sound. That's the Dan Electro. So, we usually Marshalls and Les Pauls is the stock stuff, and then all the specialty stuff. You just get into whatever fits the part best. And then live, I'm using, right now I'm using two heads that are wired up by Dave Friedman. He's a guy in LA. He does great work. They're kind of like, I guess you could say like hot rodded 800s. And I'm also using an amp by a company called Metropolis. Again, it's like they're all kind of based off of older Plexis or older 800s, but they have a few mods with a little bit more gain and whatnot. And then my live setup is pretty cool. We just switched over actually to a switching system. So what's cool about that is a lot of times I know for this record especially, we're using, say, 3 or 4 pedals at the same time. You're doing a little bit of a dance, and to go from like a straight clean that maybe, I don't know, has like some chorus on it to a tone where you need to engage like a pog, a tube screamer, maybe a little delay. Like you have to, your feet almost can't do it, So we have switching systems, and I think right now I run 2 amps all the time. One is kind of like a little bit more mid-rangey, a little bit more high-end tone. The other one is kind of a little bit more scooped out, a little more low-end, and you kind of blend the two together. You get this really nice wide balance. And then I'm using a third amp for any of the leads, just to kind of give like a little boost. And that's also EQ'd like a little bit cleaner than the other ones to kind of let the notes really ring out. So that's kind of the combo along with a shit ton of pedals.
Right now I'm using, for my main distortion tone, I was using the orange Thunderbird, but it went down one day, and the backup I had was the Rocker Verb, which is 100 watt, and I think the Thunderbird's 200 watt. So I went to the Rocker Verb, and it just, it felt a lot better for some reason, more highs to it. I thought I was going to lose some of that low end, but it didn't.
Yeah.
So I ended up sticking with the Rocker Verb. So I have that, and I kind of overdrive that with like a Boss Blues Driver as like the main distortion tone, and then I go to a Vox AC30 for clean. And so, like you said, a shit ton of pedals that go through that. Secret weapon, and I think on that rig is the Swollen Pickle. It's a great little distortion pedal that can go from a fuzzy distortion to just like a really crazy single note like overdrive.
Yeah,
it's a really great pedal. And some delays here and there, different things like that. were, just messing around at soundcheck kind of thing, and she was like, "Oh, cool. What if we moved down a couple of notes?" And he started writing lyrics to it. I think when he went on vacation with his wife.
In the desert or something.
And then came back and was like, "Hey, remember that riff you were writing? Well, I think we should do it." And I was like, "All right."
Yeah. What's cool about that riff is it's, I think most of it is probably like, it's like super pentatonic. So it's like super simple again, but those are often like the riffs that get stuck in your head. It kind of has like a Navajo chant vibe to it, like with a
little bit. Oh.
Which is, it's like super hooky. So it's a cool riff.
On Nana, that way I don't know how that one came about, but it was kind of one of those things where like sometimes you'll play a song, you'll get to a certain part, and then kind of you play a verse, a chorus, and then you don't know where to go from there. So people are just like, oh, all right, well, just kind of figuring out from whatever, just like it just starts to happen, and then sometimes you're like, oh, that's really cool, we keep that, or sometimes you're like, oh, maybe we actually write a part. But I think that was how that one came about. Was just like, oh, all right, descend, and then he goes into a great riff and solo from there.
Yeah. What's cool about that too, like I definitely wanted to play up like how dark that section sounds, because it's kind of like a change up. Like another high bit. It's cool because that section reminded me kind of like of the Sabbathy thing. We have a couple of songs. I'd say like Mama. There's that section, heavy section. Songs that have like, kind of these dark Sabbathy riffs. And Nana was one of them, and kind of played it up.
Some of the fun of it is getting to the end of that record and be like, all right, we have to perform this live now. All right, so what are we gonna do? How do we make the guitar sound like a synth or whatnot? And pedals come into play. Our friend James Louise, that's our touring keyboardist, has a lot of stuff that he covers too. It's just picking those moments and some of the the melodies that need to be showcased. And I think as an audience member too, like you don't want to hear the record. You want to hear the band playing songs and kind of experience the record. So I was always a fan of going to see bands live and having them change things up, or like, all right, how are they going to do that live? You know what I mean? And that's some of the fun of it. So I'm Frank.
I'm Mikey.
I'm Gerard.
And I'm Ray.
And we're My Chemical Romance. Our last record came out 4 years ago, but we toured on it for 2. After we got done touring on Black Parade, we took about, I'd say like 6 to 7 months to ourselves, just to kind of really regain that affirmation of why you love doing this so much, kind of live real life again. Some of us got married, some of us had kids, and then we got together and we recorded a song for a movie called Watchmen. And we did a Bob Dylan cover. We did Desolation Row, and that got us back in the studio, and juices started to get flowing again. Felt good to be, playing with each other again. We at that point, I think we wanted to get into the studio just to make music again. Because of you know, the work that went into Black Parade and the amount of touring we did on it, and you know, putting on a show every like that theatrical show every night. Because we played the record front to back for 2 years.
Pretty much
You know, had with costumes or set pieces. Like it was very much a traveling circus almost. So when thinking about that, we kind of decided, all right, well, the next record we're not going to do any of that. You know, it's going to be completely differently. The only way we can keep doing this is if we do something completely different. We decided what the record was going to be, and then went in to make the record. And that was a couple months down the line. You know, we just started to ended up running out of time. We got into the mixing process, and we had this record that was what we had set out to make, but it wasn't what we wanted the next record to be. You know, it was like, oh well, is this who we want to be for the next 2 years touring on this? And you know, I think it was an overwhelming no from the band. So we took a break from the mixing process, and then I went back into the studio. We met up with Rob Cavallo, who ended up being free again, who he produced our last record, and we just started to write songs. You know, it wasn't like, oh, we're going to do a record again. We're gonna add to this. We didn't know what it was. We just started to write songs, and 4 songs in, it was one of those things where like, wow, these 4 songs are better than anything we had done in the past year.
We were in the right minds, I think, to do it, and emotionally, we were in such a better place when we started with Rob.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That played a lot into it.
Rob brings the best out of us. Yeah. He really does. The thing about Rob Cavallo is he's so challenging, but none of it's ever negative. You know, he's always really almost daring you to be better than you've ever been. And I think what he always wants out of an artist is for them to just be the best them they can be. But that changes every time you make a record. You have to be more daring. You have to be more free. You have to do the scary things. You know, I think the scariest stuff to us arguably ended up being the best stuff on the record, depending on how you look at it. You know, things like Planetary or Sing. Those things get the biggest response live, you know. That, I mean, he always plays piano for us on certain things. He could play almost every instrument. He has this vast wealth of musical knowledge, and he's an extremely positive guy.
I think, you know, another great thing about him as a producer, you know, he kind of knows when to get involved and, you know, kind of get up in your mix, and then sometimes it's as simple as him asking a lyric question you know, kind of what are you trying to say with this song, and he lets you figure out the answers. You know, and I think that's super, super important for a band to kind of discover where they want to go on their own partially, because you know, then it's not your record anymore. It's like, you know, someone telling you what to do. You know, Rob definitely does not take that approach. Like, he lets the band be who they are, and like you said, just be the best.
It's interesting that it ended up on Danger Days, Vampire Money, because
we didn't do it for it.
We didn't do it. It had nothing to do
fun,
with Danger Days, but in the end, it had everything to do with Danger Days, because making Danger Days was the middle finger. Like, it was, and that song made us feel so free again. I think it was the second or third one that we did, but it really kick-started it again, and we felt like kids again. And we recorded it completely live, and we destroyed this control room. And I always feel bad for Doug, who was the engineer, because it just, shit was everywhere, and it was getting like super trashed.
I think that's the second take too.
Yeah,
that take is the second time we played the song together.
Yeah, but in the end, like, it's not a concept record. If the only high concept is this pirate radio station in 2019 versus this mega corporation. And I think in doing the record, we realized that sometimes you can be the corporation as well. Like, you could be good, you could be evil. Like, who's the good guys? There's no good guys, no bad guys. So. You know, I think the big thing I've noticed is we're there for each other. That's the most important thing. We're really, you know, everybody's got good days and bad days, but you could, you know, we know each other so well now, being a band 10 years, you could pick up when somebody's having a bad day and you just kind of give them a little extra. Or you back off, like, depending on, like, if somebody just needs to decompress. A lot of that's what it is. But, you know, for the most part, it's good work. Like, we're doing the good work. Like, we're fighting the good fight. So nothing's ever really bad. If it's bad, we just walk out of it. And I think the biggest thing the band learned how to do is say no. So that gives you this great ability to get yourself out of situations you just don't want to be in. It's weird because we don't think of it as marketing, at all. But we like to come up with how the music is going to be presented or injected or whatever it's going to, however it's going to get to the listener or the viewer. It's usually both at the same time, an audio and a visual. But we then do work with like whoever is, we work with in marketing, depending on which territory, and we just talk about these things, and because it's fun for us to come up with fake corporations and, that stuff's just really fun.
Yeah.
It's all part of the the artistic vision.
I mean, Frank and Mikey and G2 are super involved, even like with like the merch designs, and it can be something as minute as like changing a shade of a color, but it makes all the difference because it makes it better. There's definitely like a high quality standard that we all put on things. We had put out we wanted the special edition of the record, and we had gotten versions of these laser guns that were included in the package, and they weren't good enough, so we put it on hold and waited till they were done right. Kids had to wait a couple of months, but I think they got a better product in the end. So, quality control from internal in the band is always like utmost important, and it's another way to be creative. Writing music is its own thing, and then also doing the videos and everything else is it's a ton of fun too.
I think musically we have a lot of different influences. Visually, same thing. Everything from Bowie to Queen to everything else. So. But we always try to kind of set the tone for what it's going to be. We feel like we're very forward thinking in that way. So, it's kind of interesting when the emo thing even came up because it had nothing to do with what we looked like during Parade, but all of a sudden that became emo. So then when we worked on this one, it was almost like, now it must mean colored hair and muscle cars. It's, it's just like we're always doing something completely different than anybody else visually and musically. But reinventing is of the utmost importance because, again, that's how you want to spend the next 2 years, the adventure you want to go on. We spend a lot of time working that stuff out, and again, because we know each other so well, sometimes, I'll do the costumes, but I'll think about them deeply. I'll think about each guy, and then try to make sure that the costume is right, and then we do a fitting or something, and then they will, contribute to what that final product is going to be, like what they're really wearing, because they got to live in it. We did a lot of adjustments with Colleen Atwood this time and changing from the original drawings to what it ended up being.
Mm-hmm. We're actually playing ourselves, like even in those videos and stuff like that. It's like, all right, what would you be doing?
It's an extension
in
of our personalities,
in that environment, in that world. That's your pistol, man. That's what you have inside that you have to defend basically. Art and what we do is what's going out there and changing the world. It's going out there and fucking things up. That's why I think it was so important for us to do this record correctly. Art has to be paramount. Otherwise, if you compromise that stuff, then everything else doesn't mean anything.
It's the great thing about the chord progression is it's very simple, but it's also very hooky, and it's has kind of reminiscent of things you've heard of before, but it's like presented in a little bit of a new way. So that's kind of cool. So maybe we could just 1, 2, 3, 4 play the opening bit and then move to that verse.
The record version is actually dropped down a half step, but we're just gonna play it in standard over here. So.
That verse I think is cool because you have like the tight palm mutes kind of laying the foundation, and then kind of that clean. Well, it should be clean anyway, but kind of clean picked out part, kind of sitting high. That's definitely one thing that from Cavallo that we learned a lot in the studio, where you really want to spread your octaves to, in a sense, like to kind of really give the listener a broad picture. So, that's also a great thing in mixing too. Like all the low end shit should be happening there, and it shouldn't have a lot of high stuff in there. You leave that for the higher, higher tone instruments, guitar. You can, on the chorus on that one, it's super simple, but it's very low. If you hit the chorus, that's like a high note that's you're not even really hearing it, but it's kind of dug in there in the mix to kind of spread out the octaves. A lot of times we're kind of doubling, or when we're choosing to play those separate parts is kind of a little bit more choosy. When we were doing the revenge stuff and even like the bullet stuff, it's also funny. I think it's something that you just, as you're younger, like
tends to get noodly. And
you get noodly.
lost
Your
in
brain
the
is your brain is like going a million miles a minute, and wants to play as many notes as you possibly can in one song, or in 1/8 bars or whatever.
Yeah.
And that actually really works. For songs like play like something like, I know, granted we might be going off track, but I think Hang 'Em High is like a cool thing for that.
Fuck that pick, man.
And then the second verse, take the second verse, completely different as usual. It's us doing two completely different things, but they kind of mesh together. We have like two different approaches, I think, to guitar playing, but also, especially over time, it feels like I've definitely learned from him.
Yeah, I learn every day from this kid.
Hopefully he learns, I don't know, at least in a small bit, but I mean, I've learned so much playing with him, and you really learn how to work, with another guitar player, and it's like a team effort,
Yeah.
and that's the best fun. It's interesting, there are roles, but I feel like they change depending on what song, what part.
It's always about making the song a better song. What I mean? Sometimes you have to support the vocal. Sometimes you're countering the vocal. But it's just to make sure that the song is great, as opposed to like, well, I got this shreddy fucking riff that I want to play. I don't give a shit if it works in the song or not. But you'll see elements too, like even on Danger Days, where it's like like we're changing up second verses, which is something that we really like to do. We're like sometimes you'll get a fake out chorus where that happens a lot on Revenge. We'll fake to the chorus and then kind of hold back. But songs like Destroy It, second verse on Destroy It is completely different than the first verse, and you get these little elements that we learned early on but kind of matured into.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important. When a listener is listening to the song, obviously depending on what song it is, sometimes a listener just wants to kind of. I think when things are a little more repetitive in a sense, you can tend to lose yourself a little bit more in it. Depending on what song it is, like a song on the record "Destroy It," it's way more aggressive. You want someone to be fucking on the edge of their seat the whole time. So each like you said, each section you want to kind of introduce something new. So we definitely like to do that. It even goes as far as like the first half of the verse is one riff, and then on the second half of the verse, maybe another guitar layer comes in to beef it up. There's a pre-chorus, and then there's one lead part you're first hearing in the pre-chorus, and then it moves to kind of focus on what he's playing, and that's the fun of like crafting a song. Is always keeping people on their toes. So there's that's kind of exciting. Like on that song, I felt like doing like a little bit of Cars riff, which is this from I think it might be from My Sharona or something. A little bit, and then just having kind of like a Brian May thing towards the end. It's underneath, but there's like a rundown. I had a tough time playing in the studio, so. Something like that. There's like a harmonized run underneath, so that's kind of like the Brian May little bit. So.